Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March 2026 edition of Tech Tuesdays with Darrow Associates, now in our fifth year of the series. I'm Jordan Darrow. It's a pleasure to be here with you. This is our monthly IR technology and services showcase held on the first Tuesday of each month from 11 to 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Our events are a one-stop destination to find the right products and service providers to maximize your effectiveness and ensure you have the tools to achieve your investor relations goals. Each showcase provides a continuing education platform for our partners to demonstrate their cutting-edge offerings and best practices to our staff, our clients, and other friends of the firm. A different IR tool is covered each month. Our sessions are provided in a virtual format with a screen shared presentation led by the presenting partner for approximately 15 to 20 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A session. We're pleased to have Glenn Hopper from Eventus Advisory Group, LLC, with us today to talk about their AI for the Finance Department service offerings. As Glenn speaks with us, you'll see his screen and all audio lines will be left open so that you may ask questions at any time. If you don't want to be heard or have background noise, please disable your microphone. Glenn, welcome to Tech Tuesdays with Darrow Associates, and thank you for being our partner. I'm now going to turn the call over to you so that you can present your platform to our viewers.
Right. All right. Thanks, Jordan. So, thanks everyone for being here. And of course, as soon as Jordan turns this over, I feel like I'm about to sneeze, so I'm going to try to try to hold off on that and get through the presentation. But it's Murphy's Law, I guess. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick here. Make sure I've got the right one. Here we go. And my marketing team is probably going to be mad. I thought it would be a great idea at the last minute to upload this to Google Slides so I could stay in the browser. And I think I broke our fonts. So if there's any marketing folks watching, I apologize for our inconsistent fonts. I'll tell you a little bit about Eventus first, and then we'll dive into our presentation today. So Eventus does CFO advisory work, fractional CFOs, a lot of public company accounting, audit prep, and FinOps as well. I'm the senior AI advisor at Eventus, and we help finance departments with AI implementations. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time today talking about our product in particular. I kind of want to show you the art of the possible with AI and finance, because I think a lot of the departments we talk to, they think about using generative AI as a way to summarize emails, a way to maybe write emails, summarize meeting notes, and all that. And you don't really think about it naturally for data and analytics and financial reporting. And so what I'm going to do today is show you how AI, especially in recent months, has really come a long way with work in finance. And I am going to show Claude today. That's just to keep from switching between Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini. Claude happens to be my favorite. I have no affiliation with Claude. I'm not shilling for their software necessarily, but in the AI race, they seem to be leaps and bounds ahead, at least in the finance function right now. Longer presentations, I would give more of an background on myself, but just so you know, I'm not some random person here just talking about AI. I do have a background in data and analytics. I was a CFO for 15 years and private equity backed companies, a lot of turnaround kind of situations. Small staff, had to do a lot of reporting, kind of leaned into statistical modeling and machine learning early on, and that sort of rode the wave with generative AI. I've written a couple books on using AI in finance. And just quickly, if you want to see more about my background, you can check out robocfo.ai. But any contacts you can come through Eventus for me. But that's just to quickly get through my background there. So let me dive in here. So I'm going to walk through a couple of things. I'm going to talk about how we implement AI, and then I'm going to show a couple of demos that really show the power of what we can do with it right now. So first, we'll talk about the adoption playbook. I'm going to try to stop this. We've got 15 minutes left, so I'm going to have to move quickly here and be sure and leave about 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. We do have a small group, so I may, if there aren't a lot of Q&A, I might expand the demos a little bit. We'll see how it goes here at the end. Okay, so this is important for finance departments and really across the workforce to understand. A formal AI adoption process is significant because there are more and more studies that some companies have leaned all the way into using generative AI. Some are halfway doing it, some are outright prohibiting it, and there are, in a longer presentation, we could talk about the hallucination and data privacy issues, and certainly reach out to me if you want to learn more about that. But what's happening in the workplace right now is something that Ethan Mollick, he's a professor at Wharton, he talks a lot about AI, but he calls them secret cyborgs, and I've sort of co-opted that phrase from him because you have employees, and this is about every company that I talk to. If the company isn't broadly using AI or if they have overly restrictive policies, you're going to find there are some employees who are using AI. And what happens with them, I know several developers who are in this boat, and they are putting out uh, a massive amount of work in a fraction of the time, literally like 1/10 of the time. So, and there are issues around that. If your employees are using AI that's not approved, they could have the wrong settings with the ChatGPT or Claude or whatever model they're using, and the data could be pushed up to train the model, which could be data leakage. If you have a policy in place, you can prevent that and put in training for the teams and help them understand when and how they can use data, what data they can use. Um, and one thing that I'm finding is uh, regardless of the size of the company, you'll see different departments within a company with sort of different approaches to AI. And when we come in and help with AI implementations, because of my background, we start in the office of the CFO a lot, but really across the company, you need to have a standardized policy around AI usage, generative AI usage. Um, and let me just quickly go through the adoption playbook just to tell you when we come in, this is what we do. So the first thing, and this really is great for really companies of any size, but I work with a lot of enterprise companies as well, and you'd be surprised, or maybe not, that enterprise companies aren't necessarily ahead of SMBs and mid-cap companies with their AI deployment. And in a lot of ways, they're behind in many companies because they can't be as nimble. But when we come into a company, the first thing we do is align leadership, and that's where we get everybody from the CEO to the CFO to the CTO to legal to HR. Every department head needs to understand, the sort of pitfalls of generative AI, where it excels, where to be careful. So the first thing we do is get leadership aligned. And once leadership's aligned, we write an AI policy that covers the tools that we can use, the data that can be used, what accounts, and HITL is something I talk about all the time. That stands for human in the loop. And that is, we don't want to end up like Deloitte did a few months ago, or like we're hearing about so many companies who uh, don't catch an AI hallucination or mistake and it ends up reputational damage. So this AI policy and the human in the loop is a very important part. And once you have the policy, then you can train your team. And we have domain experts across our company. You could be an expert in logistics, procurement, operations, finance, but that doesn't mean you're inherently going to know how to use this new tool of generative AI. So we do training tailored for each group. And here's an, font problem I had from the conversion, but the number 4 is identified champions. And I guarantee you, maybe they're these secret cyborgs, or maybe the company is more supportive of what's going on. But in every company, there are people who are out front in this, and it's great for change management. We identify those champions, give them even more training because a lot of times they're open to more technical training than your average user would be. And we find that identifying them and enabling them really helps with adoption. And it's sort of a train the trainer situation. At Eventus, we've really leaned into, and we recommend this for clients too, a collaborative culture around AI, so that you don't have people doing things in the shadows. Eventus has every 2 weeks with our internal team. We discuss AI wins, failures, pilot projects, what's working, what's not, and you can reward employees for finding ways to get more efficient at their jobs. And this bringing it out in the open like this really helps with that change management side, and it takes away the confusion. And as I go through all this, it's important to note that this is not um, that whole rock and roll is a fad, or I couldn't see why everybody would ever need their own personal computer. I mean, AI, we are in the nascent stages, but it's coming rapidly. And even if we're a little bit behind the curve on adoption of it, it's not something we can ignore. So coming up with this collaborative culture and talking about it within the company and sharing those wins and losses really helps, regardless of what your posture is and level is now, having that understanding for the inevitable day when everybody's going to be using it, if that hasn't already come, that collaborative culture is very important. So I mentioned the biweekly syncs and rewarding efficiency, and that's the way we're able to really get this get some momentum behind the generative AI policy. And well, I say momentum, but also uh, slowing down when it needs to, because if everybody's talking about it and somebody hears where something went wrong, it may think them twice before copying and pasting the outputs of a generative AI tool and sending it off as their own work. Um, I also want to talk about when we come in, there's two forces. Everything I talked about before, that's kind of a bottom-up approach. And what I mean by that is that's giving your employees the tools, giving them the training, giving them the policy, and letting them go find ways to get more efficient at their job. And a lot of times when I talk about generative AI, especially with some of the new functionality around agentic AI and some of the automations that come in it, it's the equivalent of giving every employee their own RPA, their own robotic process automation to automate parts of their job if it's done correctly. And so that's a great part of it. But meanwhile, there's also this top-down side. And the way we address the top-down side is let's identify some pilots that are not things that are happening just at the individual level, but what's something that a whole department is looking at where there's automation. And I know, like in IR, putting together all these reports for different levels of investors and the monthly and quarterly work that is done um, each quarter. If it's something that's repeatable like that, that's the areas where we look for automation and we're applying AI. And these projects are bigger. It's maybe not something that just one person's going to roll out. So let's look at from the top down level. Let's look at our AI policy and governance. Let's look at the tools we're using, what our budget is to apply to AI, looking at ROI around that, looking at risk management and compliance around that. And that really needs to come from the top down. I know our all of our employees understand compliance as well, but you need compliance sign off and all that, especially in something like IR or any public company representation. So thinking about those top down and bottom up rollouts of AI, very important. That's the way to really adopt a generative AI culture. Okay, so I know I'm going very quickly, but I really wanted to get to these demos because when I talk about that, that's all in the abstract. And what I'm really hoping today is to show some very specific examples of how AI can help finance and accounting and IR in our work. So the first one I'm going to do is an earnings narrative generation. And the demos I'm going to show, these used to take, it was called chain of thought prompting, where you would have to break everything down into very small incremental steps. As these models have gotten bigger, you're going to see this next demo. It's a one shot, one prompt. I put in an input, the AI goes and does the work, and then it comes back with an output. So I'm putting in a trial balance, quarterly financials, prior period data, and some company context. And we can share I've already shared with Jordan all the outputs and everything because we're not going to sit here and read all this. So you'll just to see the demo here. And also, if I have more time, I do this live, but I wanted to be respectful of everyone's time. So I pre-ran these. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over now to Claude. So I went through and I ran the three demos under a project in Claude. And our first demo, let me open this up. So I had the financials, and let me open these up here just so you can see the nature of what I uploaded. Um, it used to be also you couldn't the AI could not deal with multi-tab spreadsheets. It's gotten much better now it can. So I've got a typical income statement here, a balance sheet, and we've got 4 quarters of data on each, cash flow, our key metrics, some revenue detail. So that is all I put in to the demo. And I tell it, you're a senior financial communication specialist. You're preparing an earnings press release for a NASDAQ listed company using the financial data provided. I give it, and I tell it, uh, create this press release. Tell it a headline, highlights, CEO quote, CFO quote, narrative commentary, forward-looking language. And I told it to avoid superlatives, let the numbers speak, gave it a format. So it went away and when you see these arrows here, it's actually going through the steps and writing code for the analysis and all that. And then I just this would have been even in the AI world, this would have been so it's 6 steps. This might have been 10 or 12 prompts even a year ago. I did all this in one prompt, and I want to open up what the output here is. And I know you could generate random words here, and in a demo that I'm flying through this quickly, it wouldn't be as meaningful. So I am hopefully it'll open up here in the interest of time quickly. But this is what's amazing to me. And I have not gone, admittedly, and fact checked all these numbers. So I certainly wouldn't submit this anywhere. And this is not saying give your job over to the bots. But in one shot, if you're getting this report, and I think I can't zoom in on this section of it. Let me try. Yeah, so again, I'll share. Well, that's a little better. Let me see if I can make it even bigger. Um, we get a formatted, like a standard press release, third quarter financial highlights, our management commentary. Obviously, we don't want to just spit out AI generated commentary as if we're quoting our CEO. But this is a good place to start. We've got the revenue mix breakdown, balance sheet and liquidity. We've got here our consolidated statement of operations that came from the financial statements that we uploaded, um, and business outlook, and then conference call information, which I don't know where it pulled that. That could be completely hallucinated. But this is what I'm talking about. Like knowing what it can do, you have to give it the context. And this is an example where this looks pretty good. We'd have to check the numbers, but in a single prompt, this is the kind of stuff we need to think about that we can do with AI. And I know I'm not really doing it justice in the interest of time here, but I do want to
So
jump
Glenn,
over. Yeah.
Glenn, did it create its own forward-looking disclaimer and gap
Yeah. So
reconciliation
here's
references?
our, yes, it did. So if we zoom in here, and again, like I forwarded all these to you, so you can look at them and see if it's done it right. But the forward-looking statements, press release contains statements, section 27A, section 21E. And if you think about the way these models are trained, that's a great question. I mean, they're trained on you basically just picture that they've read the entire internet, but imagine how many Qs and Ks and how many filings there are out there and how many earnings press releases there are. So it has been trained on so many of these that it has a pretty good idea of what these standard statements are. Again, I wouldn't just copy and paste and send out because who knows? Like I said, I didn't have time to evaluate all these. It can hallucinate about 14% of the time AI models, and that's even the best models right now, have hallucinations. And that's a number that's slowly gone up, but the hallucinations have not. See, like right here, I didn't upload all this information. So I don't, these numbers, this is a fake company, by the way, Nova Bridge Technologies. So it made up these email addresses and phone numbers. So again, I didn't give it any context. I just gave it financial statements. The more context you give it, the more it can actually plug in your information. And when we do implementations, we work within your systems or within setting up repositories where you can give it all this context, whether it's in your Windows environment or another environment as well. So, but great question. Yeah. Okay, and let me just, and we're already at where I should be jumping into Q&A, but since we have a small group, I think I'll quickly go through these. Variance analysis. I'm going to show you this in Claude, but we've built workflows that you click one button and it already knows you kind of pre-do everything when you upload. So if you have multiple companies you're working with, you put in their financials, you click a button one time, you get the output on the other side. I did this in Claude, but if we had more time, I would show we use a lot of tools like N8N, Zapier. There are some that are more enterprise hardened. Make is another one. But I think, we all are familiar with variance analysis and commentary, depending on the level of if it's management reports or if it's the publicly available side, maybe 4 to 8 hours per cycle. This prompt is well under 15 minutes. So what I did here is this is a different one. Let me go to demo 2. And this was a couple of prompts. And this is the same financials. I said review below and attach prepared data for and prepare data for processing. So this is the new information I gave it, the context. for the commentary. So I gave it the same financial statement that I gave last time, but I also gave it a little bit more. This would be like the MD&A. This is, I prepared this for the CFO review board package. This is our what I'm telling it to do. Flag variances exceeding 200,000 or 10%, flag changes exceeding 500K or 15% for balance sheet items. And I'm telling it now additional context. This is what I'm talking about. When you give it this additional context, it can factor all this into its outputs. Company completed a platform migration, sales and marketing spend reduction, headcount decline. And so with that, I just had to prepare the data for analysis. It went away and kind of was an overachiever here because I hadn't even gotten to my prompt, but it went ahead and created this variance analysis when I just had to prepare it. So it went through and it did a P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, and then our KPIs it calculated for us. Here's a list of the items it flagged, and then it broke down the revenue detail. But I hadn't even given it the prompt. That was just the setup to give it the context. Now I tell it, you're a senior FP&A analyst, give us an executive summary, income statement variance analysis, balance sheet observations, cash flow, KPI, and then the items requiring attention. So now it's done all that work. I give it this prompt. So now it goes through and it creates a variance report and a variance analysis. One is a document that I can hand off to management. And then the other is the numbers behind it. So here's our document that is gives an executive summary. So very similar to the last one. And I don't want to be beating a dead horse going through and showing you what it can do. Again, documents are available if you want to go through and read them and check them yourself. But just the level of detail that we're getting. And here's where I worry, because I've only given it that little bit of context. I don't know what it's basing things on here, but if it's looking at, doing a DuPont analysis or whatever of it, or breaking down key ratios, or if it knows, it knows ASC 842 and other, PCAOB items and all that. So if it's pulling from the context there, and I can also share these links to these chats, just let me know whatever I can share. Gave us an appendix, and then the appendix references this other sheet here. And we are down to 7 minutes. So let me see if this last one is Q&A war room. I'll do this and then we'll leave it open for questions. And I know everybody's got stuff going, so I can stay a few minutes longer if needed. But I do want to be respectful of your time. So the last demo here, I give it peer benchmarking. These are all documents here. If we had a little more time, I'd go through it. But I give it the financials again, and here we have the earnings call excerpt, the transcript from the earnings call, and I say, you're a senior IR advisor preparing a earnings call Q&A war room briefing. We want to predict analyst questions, and AI is very good at predicting these questions, again, because it's read a million of these transcripts. So, if you're prepping for the earnings call, this is a great way to sort of use AI as a thought partner. With the data it has, it says come up with a defensive briefing, competitive positioning, guidance considerations. So it goes through and does all this, and then it gives us this war room briefing. And I'm saying all this here, this is amazing, but it's in that bottom up approach with the right context. Your employees, you guys, everyone on this call could be doing the same thing, but there's a little more to it if we want it to be really production ready to do this in the real world, giving it more context and understanding, like having a repository where your own company's previous earnings calls and previous financials and what other information. We're actually doing this for a big enterprise company right now, building a Q&A bot that we put guardrails around so it doesn't hallucinate. And it's designed for the C-suite to actually come in and ask questions about, and we put limits on it. Like you can only go so far into a geography, and if it doesn't know the answer, it has guardrails on it and it won't make something up. But these are the kind of things that's more of a top-down project. This is, once your employees are trained and understand it, this is something that employees could be doing on their own. But look, I love this. It says the difficulty of the question, the archetype of the question, and this is not, I didn't prompt it to do this. So it somehow in its training data, if you know who's going to be on the call, they're even guessing who the question is likely from. So anyway, this was super fast, I know. And it was, if you guys haven't gone to this level of detail in AI. I know it's kind of like a parlor trick at this point, and that's why I did send over all the all the documents. But I will stop since we only have 4 minutes left. I will stop and open this up for any questions that we may have.
All right, I'm
And
going
the
to
key
start.
takeaway, I guess.
I'm going to
Yeah,
start if you don't mind.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so first, you say you like using Claude. Um, have you tried these same uploads and queries using other AI agents?
Yeah, I do a lot of bake-offs, I guess, between them and ChatGPT and Claude. Actually, Gemini, they're the top three would be Gemini, ChatGPT, and Claude. They were pretty neck and neck till I'd say 3 to 6 months ago. There's Claude for financial services. I was lucky enough to get a demo of that. It's a pretty amazing product. It's custom made for finance. Now, ChatGPT has enterprise and Google has the power of Google behind it. But what I'm really noticing in recent months is with ChatGPT, and I've got the premium pro version of it too, but you still have to break down the prompts a little more. I've noticed that Claude is better at going out and doing agentic work and doing the long form projects with fewer prompts. Of course, if you're throwing a lot at it at once, that's more opportunity to hallucinate. So, but generally right now, Claude is ahead. And I don't advise people like normally, chase the best model, whoever's winning in the benchmarks. But Claude has gone so far ahead that I'm really like at Eventus Eternally, we do bake-offs with both. The team has been on ChatGPT, but we're increasing our usage of Claude because of the kinds of things that I just showed.
Okay. And earlier you mentioned something about, the robotics process and the automation. Um, so with that in mind, do you think that every CFO or finance suite should have its own AI agent trained?
I mean, I understand that different companies have different sort of risk tolerance and appetite, but I think we're beyond the era now. In the Gartner hype cycle, generative AI has actually gone over the peak of inflated expectations, and it's in the trough of disillusionment now. I think agentic AI is at the peak. I think that we're still, if you look at the Gartner hype cycle versus the adoption cycle, we're still the early adopters are the ones who have it out there, but we haven't even hit sort of the main, and that'll happen as again using the Gartner model as we sort of come out of that into the whatever the peak or the something of enlightenment, whatever they call the next phase. We're still in the early adopters here, and I know finance and accounting, we don't want to be on the bleeding edge of this, but right now, I mean, I am, and of course, I'm a bit biased here, I think, because I work with this every day, but I don't. The safe stance right now is not to continue to ignore it. We need to be at least experimenting with this and doing pilots and figuring out. Otherwise, it's like missing the wave of the internet or the desktop computer or cloud computing.
Okay. So again, in the interest of time, because you've referenced that, and we can go a little bit over if needed, but I wanted to talk about the Deloitte problem you referenced earlier. And Deloitte's a consulting firm, they're a technology integration firm. Eventus is also a consulting firm. So from the standpoint of you being a consulting firm and there being a consulting firm, can you talk a little bit more about the Deloitte problem you mentioned and how can that be avoided
Yeah.
when using your
So
firm?
this, yeah. So the specifics around the Deloitte are, they were doing a project for the Australian government, and they turned over their presentation at the end and their reports, and there was a lot of hallucinated information in those reports. Now, an MD could have certainly did review that, and the problem with hallucinations with AI is they look really good. Like if there's a lot of in these because I didn't give it context, there's a lot of like it can make up quotes and it can make up phone numbers and emails. So if you don't give it context and you don't have these guardrails in place, you can, and even with that human review, if you're not digging in and asking questions, you can end up with a Deloitte problem like that. So whether it's internal use at Eventus or what we do for the clients, when I talked about those top-down projects, on the bottom up, employees are going to use ChatGPT. You expect human in the loop. You expect in the policy you address, this is what you have to do. You can use AI, but here's what you have to do before it's accepted. And then on the top down, we're actually building projects that are limited in scope, and they will cite every source of data, so you can click on it and see the source. And we're tying in uh, this big enterprise company I was talking about. We're tying in to they have a big project management system that BCG put in for them. We have prior quarter earnings information and public filings, and we've got some other internal data that are in three different databases. And the AI will only pull from those and will cite where it comes from. And we put in guardrails that ChatGPT and Claude don't have. If you ask a question, we're very clear in what we define. This is what you can talk about. Don't do things like forecast or things that are outside of its scope. And it will say, I can't answer that, due to
Okay.
whichever constraint. So that's the difference right there is
All
building
right.
in those controls.
So let's stay on that track for one moment. For this customer of yours, Boston Consulting Group did their initial implementation. Why did this customer come to you for
So
this
BCG
solution?
is still in there, and the BCG was not doing AI implementation. This was just a project management tool that they've put in enterprise companies around the world. And basically, this tool, there's tens of thousands of projects across this company, and it's the interaction with it is very difficult, and you can only do semantic search, kind of like Googling. Whereas with AI, with putting in what's called an MCP server, we can actually natural language search and find the relevant documents and projects and put them in place. And I don't know if that was a smaller firm, we're not going to cost as much as BCG does, but I don't think in that case that I don't think in that case, we're not trying to compete on price necessarily on that. Really more on here's the comfort, here's what we do, what we can build, and here's in getting the client comfortable with the technology. And we work with everybody like their AI Circle of Excellence guy, their head of digital transformation, former CFO that was moved over to a transformation role. So we have IT support, CTO support, technology support, and finance support within that company.
All right. Uh, in the remaining time that we have, I'm going to switch over to a question from the field here. It comes from Jeff Christensen. Um, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to make sure that you give us the full, thorough answer. Jeff writes, Glenn, very informative. The quarterly results press releases we are writing are non-public material information. How does the Claude platform address that?
Yeah. So in Claude, the biggest security risk would be if you had it turned off that you were using your data to train the models. And Claude and ChatGPT, I think default is if you don't go into the settings and shift it, you are automatically going to be your data will be used to train the models. In Claude, it defaults to not use to train the models. And there's other settings. If you have a Claude Teams account where you can turn off, zero retention policy on the prompts you give it. So you can really lock this thing down. But what I will say, and here comes the sneeze again, but what I will say is um, try not to sneeze. Uh, SOC There it comes finally. Yeah. Claude is SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. It has the data is encrypted at rest and basically anything that another SaaS tool has. If you're using any SaaS tool and
Hmm.
you trust the compliance of that and you have the settings in a way that your data is not being pushed out to the model, then there's some of the fears I think are overstated with some of the AI, but that is a great question, and we could talk more at length about how we implement, and we've even done outside of Claude within Azure environments within ChatGPT, and I'm not a huge fan of Copilot. Microsoft has sort of neutered that a little bit, but but even with ChatGPT implementations, if you want to stay in sort of a walled garden, we can do that. That's a little bit more of a technical setup, but there are, again, with that SOC 2 compliance and the proper settings, Not to be cavalier with data, but that does address the majority of the concerns.
All right, Glenn. We're pretty much out of time, and there's so much more we can jump into on this subject. So I'm going to let everyone reach out to you directly if they have any follow-up concerns or questions. And we do have that extensive email you sent us that we could send to all of our clients with all the different reports that you created using the platform that you've outlined for us. So with that, I'm going to conclude our monthly installment of Tech Tuesdays with Darrow Associates. Thanks to Glenn Hopper from Eventus Advisor Group for speaking about the firm's latest innovations for public companies, particularly AI in the C-suite in the finance department. Um, Thanks to all of you who participated in keeping your IR knowledge base at the cutting edge. Please join us in April when we'll talk with Lead Forensics about their IR Insight solutions. Until then, we trust our Tech Tuesday sessions are helpful in implementing your IR strategies. Thanks again for joining us, and goodbye to everyone.